Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to the Military Reporter channel. This morning, on the 12th of March 2025, the most important and interesting updates are coming from the Kursk Oblast. According to the information we have this morning, the armed forces of the Russian Federation have managed to establish complete control over the city of Sudzha. It's important to understand the difference between the city of Sudzha and the Sudzha agglomeration. When talking about the city of Sudzha, we are referring to the territory in the central part of the Sudzha agglomeration. This is exactly the city itself. We can compare the maps from different dates. For example, this was the situation at the beginning of the 12th of March, and this was the situation by the end of the 11th of March. As you can see, the progress of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is significant. Once again, the city of Sudzha has fallen. However, when talking about the Sudzha agglomeration itself, there are still 3 towns left. 1. Geolocated, located in the northern and northwestern part of the Sudzha agglomeration. 2. Goncharovka, located in the western and southwestern part of the agglomeration. 3. Padol, located in the southern part of the agglomeration. Summarizing everything, we have some doubts about whether there are still Ukrainian forces in the town of Padol. We believe that this settlement was probably also captured by the Russians by the morning of the 12th of March 2025. However, we still haven't received any confirmation to support this. In any case, if the Russians haven't yet taken control of this settlement, they will almost certainly be able to do so by the sunset of the 12th of March 2025. Furthermore, according to the information we have from various reliable pro-Russian sources, as a result of the offensive operation, the Russians have also managed to enter the Sudzha agglomeration from the northern part by attacking Ukrainian positions from the settlement of Kasachia Lakhnya. These territories were also captured by the Russians, and due to the complete absence of any barriers or defensive constructions that could slow them down, we believe this will lead to the complete collapse of the settlement of Geolocated within the next day, or possibly within the next 12 hours, by sunset. We also believe that the Ukrainians will only be able to hold their positions in the territory of Goncharovka for a few more hours because this village is cut off from the main Sudzha agglomeration by rivers, which serve as natural barriers and could temporarily slow down the Russian advance. We are not saying that the Russians are incapable of taking the settlement of Goncharovka. We're saying that it is most likely going to be the last settlement taken by the Russians when it comes to the Sudzha agglomeration. Now let's discuss the details and geolocations. Starting this morning, we have received a lot of updates and videos from Soviet Square in Sudzha. Since the beginning of the morning, 3 videos have been published. In one video, we can see a Russian soldier raising the Russian flag on what is probably the tallest structure in the central part of the Sudzha agglomeration. The Russians appeared very happy while doing this. Later, we received another video from Soviet Square itself, where we can see 7 Russian soldiers. The fact that they were openly moving around without fear suggests that most likely Ukrainian FPV drones and Ukrainian forces were already much further to the west, possibly near the border. This is another video published by the Russians in the early morning of the 12th of March, 2025. Most likely, this is the video showing the first Russian flag being raised by Russian forces near the town hall. We believe that within the next 6 hours, the Russians will raise their first flags in the western, southwestern, and northwestern parts of the Sudzha agglomeration. Once that happens, the battle for this territory will be over, leaving just a few small villages under complete Ukrainian control. We are talking about the small village of Oleshnya, the small village of Melivoy, possibly Kurilovka, the small settlements of Gayevo and Gornely. These villages are located along the border, and according to the information we have, the Ukrainians are planning to hold them for as long as possible. The forces of the 61 ST Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces are responsible for this mission. However, we are not confident that the Ukrainians will be able to succeed. According to various sources, during the retreat and withdrawal from their positions, the Ukrainians lost up to 70% of their soldiers in the Sudzha agglomeration. This means that the remaining Ukrainian forces are likely to be completely disorganized, exhausted, and very tired, making it unlikely that they will be able to continue effective defensive operations. Of course, there are now many discussions and rumors about whether the Russians will continue their offensive deeper into the territory of Sumy or not. You know that the negotiation process in Saudi Arabia recently concluded between the delegations of the United States and Ukraine. As a result of this negotiation process, several important statements were made by the Ukrainian side. Ukraine expressed its willingness to accept the U.S. proposal *** for an immediate 30-day ceasefire, which could be extended by mutual agreement of both parties. The agreed to immediately lift the pause in intelligence sharing and restore military aid to Ukraine. And Ukraine agreed to conclude a comprehensive agreement on the development of Ukraine's critical mineral resources as soon as possible. Just 2 days ago, the Ukrainians were demanding a ceasefire only for specific types of combat, such as aerial and naval operations and attacks on energy facilities. However, after their complete defeat by the Russians in the city of Sudzha and the Sudzha direction ***, the Ukrainians accepted the idea of a broader ceasefire along the entire combat contact line. If the Russians agree to this 30-day ceasefire, it will completely benefit Ukraine. Many pro-Russian military experts have reported that this ceasefire would bring no advantage to the Russians. Agreeing to the ceasefire would only create problems and losses for the Russians because, during this period, the Ukrainians would have time to restore their forces, regroup their units, and strengthen their defenses. Most military and political experts believe that within 30 days, the ceasefire would likely be broken, either by the Russians or the Ukrainians, and that the special military operation would resume. The key question is, why would Putin agree to this ceasefire? According to the information we have, by Friday, a conversation between Putin and Donald Trump is expected to take place. This will be more than just a phone call. This was reported by Kremlin press journalist Dmitry Smirnov. Trump previously stated that he would speak with Putin this week. Another important statement was made by Trump himself. He believes that if Putin agrees to the ceasefire, something the U.S. president is counting on, it would mark 75% of the way toward resolving the Ukrainian conflict. Russia has not ruled out the possibility of contacts with U.S. representatives in the coming days. Additionally, the European Union supports the proposal for a ceasefire in Ukraine, according to the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. Since the beginning of these talks and the Sudzha offensive operation, we have still not heard anything from Putin himself. He has not made any public statements or shared his opinion about the situation. However, today we received the first signal from Moscow. The Minister of Foreign Affairs stated his position on the ceasefire, emphasizing that a ceasefire without addressing the root causes of the conflict would not be acceptable. What is important to us is not a ceasefire that will allow Ukraine to rearm itself again and again against our country, but a long-term, sustainable peace based on eliminating the root causes of the conflict. According to the Russians, the root causes of the conflict include Ukraine's potential membership in NATO, the presence of the European Union on Ukrainian territory, anti-Russian authorities in Kiev, issues related to the Russian language and other political and social tensions. Many experts now believe that the Russians will reject this ceasefire. However, the reality is that Putin is still considering his next move. This is a very delicate and strategic game between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. For example, today Marco Rubio stated that after the talks between Ukraine and the United States, the ball is now in Russia's court regarding peace in Ukraine. This implies that if Russia rejects the ceasefire agreement, the United States will likely impose even harsher sanctions on Russia and attempt to further cripple the Russian economy. However, the Russians, particularly Putin, are currently trying to find a way to continue the conflict until Europe, Ukraine, and the United States accept Russia's demands and proposals. The situation is complicated by the fact that there are only 2 to 3 days left before the planned talks between Putin and Trump. By that time, Putin will need to make a decision. Meanwhile, the Russians have already started an investigation in the city of Sudzha. If you remember, we've talked a lot about the alleged war crimes committed by Ukrainian forces in the Sudzha region. You may have already seen, or if you search online, you will likely find, a significant number of videos and reports published by the Russian side regarding these alleged war crimes. On the morning of March 12, 2025, the first videos from the city of Sudzha and the surrounding territories, recaptured or liberated by the Russians since March 8, 2025, began to surface. These videos reportedly show civilian casualties, loss of life among elderly people, torture and other human rights violations. It's expected that over the next few days, the Russians will collect as much evidence as possible of these alleged war crimes. Most likely, Russia will present this evidence to the United States and use it as a justification to reject any ceasefire agreement. This would effectively shift the pressure back onto Ukraine and the United States. We believe that something along these lines will unfold over the next several days, as the Russians attempt to buy more time. Despite the ongoing negotiation process in Saudi Arabia, the Russians have continued to launch attacks on Ukrainian territory. Over the previous night, Russia carried out a significant number of missile and drone strikes on Ukraine. Several explosions were recorded in the city of Dnipro. First, Russian forces attacked Ukrainian positions with drones. Then, several Iskander missiles struck the city. According to the information we have, a hotel was destroyed by Russian missile fire. Reports suggest that Western volunteers or instructors may have been staying at the hotel. Now let's move on to the situation on the ground on other front lines. Some of the most interesting updates are coming from the southern direction, where the Ukrainians continue their counterattacks. According to the information we have, the Ukrainians have managed to restore control over 50% of the settlement of Novosilovka. This information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian sources and military mappers, but there has been no confirmation from the Russian side. On the other hand, reliable Russian sources have reported that as a result of Russian offensive operations, Russian forces managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Dnipro Energia by the morning of March 12, 2025. This reflects the changes on the ground between the end of March 11 and the beginning of March 12. Despite the ongoing negotiation process, both sides continue their offensive operations. One thing we can say for sure is that it will now be much easier for Ukraine to continue its fight against Russia. The United States has lifted the pause on intelligence sharing and will resume security assistance to Ukraine. This was confirmed by the U.S. State Department, which means that the flow of Western weapons and support to Ukraine will resume. Western countries are once again stepping up their efforts to arm Ukraine in its fight against Russian forces. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and have a good day.